start with speaking about understanding AI and start with Jose. If you could provide us with kind of a brief overview of AI and how it's disrupting executive careers and really kind of the broader impact of AI that you're seeing.
Perfect. Thank you, Carlson. I think the most important thing to consider is that we are at a stage with AI that is almost the equivalent of computing in the mainframe era. So it's being thrown around a lot. It's being considered a little bit of a niche in terms of how it's approached and how we want to incorporate this into the nature of work and the work that we're all doing. But this is going to evolve very, very rapidly, and pretty soon, same thing that happened with computing is going to happen with the integration of AI into multiple functions. We won't even notice it, and it's probably going to happen within months rather than years or decades, the way that that computing evolved. One of the most important aspects to consider is that at this point, AI is going to be the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution for knowledge workers, and it's going to disrupt every single element of our craft, whether it's in a management role, an executive role, or any other type of individual contributor role. It's just simply going to completely transform the way that we do work. There's an expectation of a very significant return on productivity, which might end up in a reduction of 30 to 40% in the volume of jobs within any given structure, within any given company, depending on the industry. So the most important thing to consider about AI is that what we should be looking at is not so much the technology itself, but how we use it, how we leverage that productivity, and most importantly, how we stand out with our own value proposition in the face of these productivity changes, especially in the era of remote work. There is a very, very big risk that we utilize our productivity gains for our own personal purpose. We care very much about a work-life balance. And what we're currently seeing today with many of our clients is that people that are in remote positions, they are using AI to leverage productivity, but they're keeping the gains to be able to just complete their tasks, complete their objectives for the day, and then just pretty much check out and go spend some personal time, whether it's working out, being with families. But in the end, that lack of going the extra mile is very tempting, and then it can have a significant impact in whether or not you keep your job versus somebody that's doing the same thing. And it would also potentially impact the perception of value that you provide. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about value, then that means that you're talking about the compensation, the salary structures, which at some point will also be affected because of the effect of de-skilling, which I think we'll get into it later in later part of the conversation. The most important thing to consider right now about AI is that it's like an alien spaceship. We know it's coming. We have no idea what it's going to do, and we have no idea how we're going to be able to fight against it.
Yeah, it seems like uncharted territory, but I really like how you honed in on the, impact of productivity across the board. Michael, is there anything you would like to add on how AI is disrupting executive careers or your overview of AI?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Wilson. I think, look, everyone is talking about AI, artificial intelligence. And as Jose's pointed out, we've been around this data science, machine learning, AI world now for actually quite a few years. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of hype, but actually on the ground, what's really changing? What I think is really changing is that every executive is expected to know something about AI in their function or in their sector. And there is no functional sector which is untouched. So if you're in marketing, you're supposed to know about how to use generative AI to develop images and copy and advertising and video automatically without having to use your advertising agency. If you're in the supply chain, you're supposed to know about using AI tools to automate supply chain processes. If you're in the legal profession, you're supposed to know about how to use AI to automate knowledge research and knowledge transfer. So there's no area that's untouched. But I think the important thing is that nobody can be an expert in all this. And that's why companies are hiring specific dedicated experts to drive this AI agenda. So that's why we see some companies hiring chief AI officers who can be the go-to champion at board level, who can identify and delineate a strategy and a plan. That's why we see companies hiring dedicated prompt engineers, dedicated AI data science leaders, people who can actually feed into the marketing person or the supply chain person and complement and add to expertise that they have in the AI world. I think all in all, therefore, there's a lot of talk. There's a need to know something about it, but at the same time, there's a need to know where to go to then find that expertise. I think that's what's critical. I think what's also important to say is that all of this depends on the data quality in the organization. So we can talk about analytics and artificial intelligence and data science. If the data ain't there, if the data quality isn't right, then you can't take any advantage from it. So a lot of companies are now talking about actually, rather than being AI-led, what they actually need to become is a data quality organization, because that will provide the foundations which will enable them to take advantage of these AI tools.
Great, thank you, Michael. That's a really important point on the data aspect of it, and just how AI is, requiring people to essentially somewhat be experts in different areas so suddenly. We talked
I
a
want
little.
to reinforce that
Yeah.
point for Michael. It really is all about the data, and it's critical because AI analytics, it all comes from the data that we provide.
Right, right. And I mean, it's the data is crucial, right, into kind of the machine learning as well. And Brittany, I know you work in kind of the data analytics space, right? From your perspective, what are some of the opportunities and challenges does AI present for executives across different sectors?
Yeah, I think that in my view, the opportunity is the same as the challenge. I think that the interesting thing about AI is that all of these changes that we're talking about that are coming to jobs, to organizations, to industries, as Jose kind of alluded to, it's not necessarily going to be the same type of linear change that we saw in prior, technological advances. It's going to be a little bit more exponential in the function of it. And we've already seen some of that, I think, since the release of ChatGPT, because, seemingly overnight, there's new job families like prompt engineering, and organizations and even entire industries are having to underwrite the AI risk to their business in a completely new way. So the opportunity is that companies are going to desperately need executives who are at their very, very core adaptable and resilient, and the ability to learn fast, to pivot, to adapt to a new normal that no one really knows what will look like, will be very, very valued, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. Even the people who are the deepest experts in this field, there's not a consensus about how this is going to go, or what the future of work will exactly look like in the next 10 to 15 years. So I think that the opportunity is being prepared for that uncertainty and being able to embrace it. And those are the types of really strong, steady leadership that organizations are really going to value moving forward.
Great. Rupert, is there anything you would like to add on the opportunities and challenges that AI presents for executives?
Yeah, so I think Brittany's very on point about this, actually, which is, I think the biggest thing that's going to happen is we're going to move finally to a more sort of skills-based economy, rather than having a kind of a really functionally oriented approach, right? The reality is, if you're trying to hire a prompt engineer, for example, they don't exist, right? They might have existed for the last 6 months when someone's worked it out, but they don't exist fundamentally, right? So it's all about changing the way in which you see organizations, and you grow organizations into something that is much more skills-based, rather than much more based on artifacts of experience. And so that is going to be a significant change across all sectors. But I think within individual sectors, it'll depend on what the benefits are from AI. So, for example, you might have efficiency or productivity gains, And probably the sectors that are seeing the most from that at the moment are things like anything that's technology-based, software-based, and partly that's because software copilots as a particular tool from AI are absolutely exploding the productivity. You can write a lot of code very quickly with very little effort and/or experience in terms of quality of coding. Now, there's obviously a QA issue in that as well, but that's also solved in that to some extent those AI tools and those copilots can actually do their own QA on their own code. So that's one industry where efficiency is going to be extremely valuable. But then you might have, for example, task automation, which, if I'm honest with you, is probably what most people think of as AI and have done for the last 10 years. I think what we're trying to describe and talk about here, which we never really put a label on, is more generative AI and what's happened as a result of large language models and things like that. But back to task automation, which has been around for a while, but it's getting much more powerful as a result of generative AI. That has application in industries that might be more associated with more traditional industries. So, for example, manufacturing and things like that, where you can actually apply AI to the use of things like robotics and physical changes. So I think it just depends on the sector as to what elements of AI, in the broadest of terms that we talk about it, is going to actually be applied. And I think it's different across a range of different industries.
Great, thank you. Rupert, are more hiring organizations seeking candidates with experience with AI, or are they looking for more like soft skills?
Yeah, good question. To go back to what Michael mentioned, which I hear on a pretty much daily basis, which is, can you hire us a chief AI officer? And the response to that, I think, is, well, yes, we can, but it's highly unlikely that there is a candidate pool large enough to actually facilitate someone who has got enough knowledge of AI in its current guise over the last 2 to 3 years, which is what really has changed in the world of AI today. So I think the more important point, again, which Michael picked up on, is the relevance of being savvy to or understanding AI within the various different functions, because it touches everything. I mean, I'd almost go as far as to say that it is or should be or will become very soon table stakes for being an executive, as an understanding of AI in the effect of it having an impact on your particular function. Reality is, right, you'd probably in these days be unlikely to hire an executive who didn't at least know how to use PowerPoint, right? Well, very soon you'd be unlikely to hire an executive who doesn't understand the use or applications of tools in the AI environment. Now, the issue right now is that we don't really know which ones of those tools and competencies, capabilities are going to win out. So there's a little bit of like, we're feeling our way around. We're sort of putting in place a bit of a sticky plaster of let's get a chief AI officer in place. But the reality is, if that chief AI officer is thinking about ethics and legal, well, really that should sit with the legal counsel. If that individual is thinking about like the future and vision for AI and how it impacts technology, well, really that should be sitting with the CTO. So I think there's so to answer the question more directly, yes, people are seeking candidates like chief AI officers, but it is a sticking plaster whilst we wait for the individual functions to catch up and learn how to work with AI and to learn how to work with the tools in AI that are surfacing as the most relevant ones.
Great, thank you. Jose, in your aspect, are more hiring organizations also seeking candidates with AI experience?
Yeah, the key here is exactly what Rupert mentioned. It's not just AI experience. It's like asking right now in an interview whether you know how to use PowerPoint. It's almost like an absolute given. At this stage of the game, what we do want to be able to identify is that people understand the nature of AI and that they really do have the very deep leadership skills to be able to handle ambiguity and be able to handle the changes that are coming and that are going to be coming very, very quickly. We've mentioned that we've been doing things like data analytics and machine learning for more than 10 years. It's very important to recognize something, and this is going to come up when we start having the conversation about ethics and the question about privacy and decision-making. It's important to identify the difference between an AI model and an algorithm. An algorithm, task automation, all of these things that we've been doing for more than a decade involve instructions that we can go back and identify how a decision was made. If you apply for credit, you go through an automated system, there's going to be certain decisions that are going to be made. but these end up being a flow chart that at some point a human can go back and say, oh, this is how this decision came to be. And there's no ethical question there. When you think of an AI model, you can't trace it back. It's now been so big that it's become a black box. And that's where a lot of the complications are going to come from. And we need leaders that understand not precisely the AI models itself, but how to handle the changes that are going to be coming. The number one trait that I believe is lacking, that is going to have to be a core leadership skill, is designing and implementing experiments. What is it that you want to prove? How is it that you're going to be able to learn from what you're doing? And how are you going to guide the team that you're leading to understanding that iterations, experimentation, screwing it up, and learning from it is going to be the new normal. You can't wait to come back and figure out, okay, what is this going to mean for my job? What does ChatGPT mean? What does Copilot mean? What's going to happen when this thing is embedded in every single computer? Which, by the way, Microsoft has already announced it. It's going to be embedded in the iPhone 16. These things, in many ways, are not going to wait for us as leaders of organizations to plan out our change management. They're just going to hit us in the face because the tools are just coming in. And any executive that attempts to control it and say, this is going to be our AI policy, it's the same thing that happened when the iPhone was implemented is going to happen with those IT policies. IT departments fought the implementation of a phone that was both personal and business, and that battle was lost very quickly. Same thing is going to happen with AI, and it's going to happen within weeks. There's not going to be a battle when it comes to attempting to control what AI does. It's just going to be embedded in every single tool that we're using. But back to my point, experiment design and learning how to deal with experiments is going to be the number one trait that we're going to be looking for in leadership roles for the next year.
Great, thank you. And that was a
Well, I
great
think there's
conclusion also on AI versus algorithm. Mike?